Babble with Ben.
This podcast is recorded on the lands of the Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nation. I wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be participating today. Welcome to the show, Simon Gemmill of Kamikaze Roadrunners and Melbourne Music Playlist.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, mate. You're welcome. Thanks for coming in today. I know we had a little bit of a disaster where I forgot my laptop, and we've had to very kindly be looked after by the techs here to get the mics plugged into something to record. And you've been very gracious about that. Thank you.
And he was very helpful.
He was great. He was great.
Yeah.
Now, you've just put a new album out, and it's a bit of a culmination of a long journey, I think.
Yeah, it's called Can I Crash on Your Planet?
Yeah.
And quite a big fan of NoFX. I love the way their albums have, puns in the titles and kind of two meanings, like can I get off here, because of climate change and everything else, and also like an alien sort of crash landing into the planet, when he's exploring it. Yeah, so I've been working on those recordings for about the last year.
Yeah, fantastic. And you were telling me just earlier that you're playing, you've got a vocalist called Jessica
Lawrence.
Jessica Lawrence, excellent.
Yeah, she's a former bandmate.
Ah, fantastic.
Yeah.
And apart from that, it's all you, isn't it? Your guitar, drums, bass?
Yep, guitar, bass, drums, piano.
Fantastic.
And mixing.
How do you deal with that workload? I mean, I get exhausted, just writing the lyrics and writing the melody.
Yeah. I've been doing it sort of as a hobby for years. I've been playing in bands and kind of done that on the side. Years ago in New Zealand, I sort of started playing around with Audacity, which isn't that great, but it's a pretty good thing to learn what you're doing with, and just quite fun, and I used to do the drums first, then add other things. And really this year I finally worked out that it's actually best to kind of do it with a click track. It's kind of better to do the drums a bit later because then you can really sort of feel the tune and just, you know where you're going with it.
I've heard people say that. The classic scenario is to do the drums first because that way you've got the rhythm bed down.
Yeah.
But more and more people are saying, do the guitars and the vocals first to a click, right?
Yeah.
And then the drums can complement the accents of the song a bit more easily rather than just flying blind.
Yeah, you sort of feel the song. But when I started doing it, so obviously we all know about lockdown, and there were a few of us that were doing sort of online recording projects during that time. So I had a few sort of bandmates, people I've been jamming with in 2019. We started recording together on BandLab, and we were sort of recording our bits at different times and uploading it and sort of adding tracks. And basically I started getting ideas then, and the other two were taking too long. So I started just sort of working on my own stuff. But when I sort of started doing it, decided to make it a solo project, I did the first couple of tunes, I just did a drum track.
Yep.
And then I had no idea what I was going to do next. So I just recorded the drums and then sort of played around on the guitar till I could think of something to play over it. So I did a few instrumental tunes first that were just pretty much jamming with myself. So it's like, 4 people in a room jamming out, but it was me kind of improvising each track. And the other weird thing is if I played it again, I'd have to go back and learn what I played. So I didn't write anything down.
One of the many things that I'm very grateful for learning at Box Hill, right, is how to write music. And I've got Sibelius, and as soon as I'm convinced that this song is going to be something I'm going to put out, right, I'm just like, okay, here are the chords at the very minimum. If I can do the voicings of the chords and the vocal melody as well, because I'm the same. I've felt so silly at gigs before because I'll be doing them on the fly, not on the fly, but in a rush, right? And I'll be like, here's printed versions of my own lyrics, right, with the chords next to them because I'm like, Who are your influences for Kamikaze Roadrunners? There's a bit of a shoegaze vibe there, definitely.
That's an interesting question. I also struggle with the genre label thing as well, so interesting hearing that. A bunch of different things. When I put out After the Stone, because I actually originally wrote that in 2018, it's a second or third version I've tried recording of that one.
Yep.
I was trying to make something sort of sound post-rocky, so I sort of called it After the Stone because it was like post-rock.
And another pun.
Yeah, and then someone commented on Instagram, I think, something about having kind of like a sort of a doom vibe, and then sort of going sort of melodic at the end. I was thinking that's a really interesting comment because I'm sort of trying to do a post-rocky thing, but also thinking of 90s Smashing Pumpkins and that sort of stuff. And the way that guy described what I was doing was exactly what they did, having the really, really heavy guitar playing and then having some really nice sort of melodic, kind of nice, almost sort of happy sounding lead guitar over the top. So Smashing Pumpkins, Tool, that sort of stuff. And Tool, again, that's another good example of that. You've got the really heavy, distorted rhythm and then that almost clean-sounding lead over the top.
Absolutely.
Kind of bright lead.
I thought I could hear a little bit of Tool in there. We were having a bit of a joke about polyrhythms before. Is it 24's got the polyrhythms, the 3/2, I think?
Yeah, and I don't even know if I got the maths right, but I think it might have been 6/8 over 4/4, and I was thinking of 6/4s, and I thought, it could be a subtle, nothing to do with an age or anything, but just more like that's the, if you add up the time signatures.
So do you do all these recordings at home?
Yeah, and that was before our daughter was born a year ago. That what is now her room, I used to record them there.
Yep.
At the start of lockdown, I had an acoustic kit.
Yep.
So I got a Tama drum kit, and the drum teacher at the school where I work, he has, those mesh heads and the low volume cymbals.
Yep.
So I went and got that at home for practicing on. And it was during the lockdown when I started recording lots that I sort of thought, actually, now that I really want to record, I can't record this kit because it's awesome for practicing, but it's not great to record. So I couldn't have sold that and went and got the Roland kit.
Yep.
But completely forgot where I was going with the answer.
I was just trying to think, finding not only the space to do all these recordings, because you're recording 3 different instruments, as well as, if you've got a newborn, you've sort of got to be conscious of noise levels too, yeah? Yeah,
so we moved everything out to the garage. I used to have my car in there, and it's lucky, not everywhere has a garage, but everything's out there.
Yeah.
So obviously the drum kit's just there set up all the time. Then you have, the guitars and everything just in cases. So really it's just usually one thing out at a time. So just turn the drum kit on, record that, get the guitar out, record that, get the bass out sort of thing. And the good thing is all that stuff's quiet. So especially after she was born, I was recording the guitar through an amp, but I started just plugging it in and using the GarageBand plugins. And the drum kit, it's that kind of tapping sound. And I didn't necessarily do that when she was asleep either,
Yeah.
But she'd be out with my wife or something else as well. But there was no kind of loud band playing in the house kind of where there's a baby asleep. That would be kind of impossible.
No Marshall stacks. No, that's good.
Yeah.
And you were saying you use GarageBand for your recordings?
Yeah, so it was obviously a big step up from Audacity. I know there's Logic, and my sister's got that and told me that it's obviously better. I just haven't got around to trying it yet. It's probably worth spending a few hundred to get those extra things that it has. But it was also quite good to seeing how much you can get out of GarageBand, because it's not necessarily taken that seriously. I know, my understanding is GarageBand and Logic is similar. My sister said, Logic is like GarageBand that's been to university sort of thing for a comparison. But just for me, just learning how those plugins work was cool. Like there's that double and delay effect, which is a damn nice, delay sound on the guitar.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Like on 24, that's the first one. I had double and delay on one track, and then one of the sort of distortion ones on the other one. So I had 2 lead guitars kind of playing in harmony.
Yep.
One's like a delay, one's kind of heavy, and it was really cool. So I think I might get to the point that I've kind of used those effects enough times and time to try something else. But it's quite impressive what you can do with it. And I spent the last year just learning how to mix myself as well.
Well, considering that, if you think about what the Beatles or ABBA used, they might have had like, a 24-track disc, and that cost $1,000 an hour or something, right?
Yeah.
To have GarageBand, I know people sort of poo-poo on GarageBand, but a lot of people that I've had on this podcast actually started on it and really love it, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. It's free with the laptop, you know, and you just get so much power in it. I mean, like you could run, how many tracks do you find that your sessions take up these days?
So when I started out, and especially with the electronic kit, so that's one track as opposed to what you normally have with drums. When I was just doing my instrumental tunes, might have been, 4 to 8 sort of thing.
Yeah.
But with the songs I've done with Jess, with that song Solitude, she sent me over 16 vocal tracks.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So there was her singing, backup harmonies to herself, like a kind of a choir effect. And I didn't count exactly, but there's close to 20 vocal tracks.
Yeah.
So it's a massive lesson in mixing about how it's all about pulling things down. Like a friend told me that years ago about equalizing. It's not about bringing things up, it's about bringing them down. And if you're doing audio, you probably would say the same thing. But yeah, like you have to just keep pulling things down until the things you want to hear come up. You have to kind of like make space, and especially with that many vocal tracks, you have to just, pull things down until, like if I can't hear the drums, I've got to turn everything else down until the drums start coming through again. Because if you just turn them up, it kind of wrecks everything. You end up distorting the whole thing.
Yeah, because if you've got, with digital headroom, right, like there's a pretty solid 0 up there, like you can't go past that.
Yeah.
I know when I mix tracks, it's always the first thing is like, okay, is it the vocals on the top or is it the drums on the top? And then putting the snare is always a challenge as well, know. So, I feel you on that because, because it's like when you're producing these tracks, especially all by yourself, right, it's like, which of these is my favorite child that I'm going to, put on the pedestal? Yeah,
exactly. And it was quite a how you get studio monitors, because they're neutral. I had quite a lesson in that as well. So I've been mixing with headphones, And then sort of in the daytime when I could sort of listen to the stereo in the lounge, sort of play it through that, and then I'd go, it doesn't sound that good. So towards the end, I actually got some Sennheiser, studio monitor headphones.
Ah, wow.
You guys were talking about forums before. I actually had to look through a few forums to see which ones are actually good. And we want some that are actually neutral.
Yeah.
But even with them, it wasn't perfect. You really do have to listen on several different things and see if you like the sound on all of them, because you could listen on one thing, it sounds good. You listen on another one, and then you can't hear the drums. I'm like, well, that's not going to do. I can't send it to get mastered if that's how it's going to come out.
Well, that's the trick, isn't it? Because I know that when I listen to, songs in the car, it sounds completely different to how it sounds on my AirPods.
Yeah.
And it might sound completely different on like a set of, Sennheiser headphones as it would to my AirPods as well, right? And so there's always that trick, like which one do you trust? And I kind of trust them these days. Like I know what it'll sound good on, but the ones that I trust are kind of the consumer ones. You know what I mean? Like the cheapest speaker, the AirPods, because I figure that if I get it sounding good on AirPods, right, there's going to be some people that will listen to this stuff on AirPods. Yeah,
exactly. And I forgot the car. I could add that story back in after you said that.
Yeah.
That was one of the eye openers. Mixed something. I thought it sounded really good. And with the bass effects, the bass plugins in GarageBand, I had that the sub stack thing, and the speakers were just massively distorting from the bass. It was going. I was like, I can't leave it like this. Like I don't know how many people's stereos aren't going to be able to handle the bass. So I actually had to bring it right back down until it sounded normal.
Have you got a subwoofer in your car?
No, but we've got. When I moved to Melbourne in 2012, I went to Dick Smith and got one of those, DVD players with the 5 little speakers and the sub. So we watch TV and listen to music through that at home.
Yeah.
And everything sounds great on that.
Yeah.
But car, like you said about the consumer thing before, like just an old, shitty cassette, stereo in a car.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of good to know if it doesn't sound good on that, because that's some people listen on something like that, or like a laptop speaker or a little Bluetooth speaker or something.
Yeah.
It has to sound good on everything. So that's been part of the lesson. And then as soon as you hear something that sounds wrong, you go back and you have to mix it again and then try it on 2 or 3 different things again. So the 5 songs I did with Jess, that's probably the most I've remixed anything. I actually got to the point I actually just have to stop and just send it to get mastered, because it just kept on, second guessing it. And, at some point you've got to sort of call it quits and just go like it is what it is, and let go of it,
There is a saying that all art is never finished, only abandoned. And I sort of, there's a point where I know when I was doing some stuff for my electronic music project, Suburbia, right, there was just a point where I just could not listen to the damn thing one more time. And I was like, no, can we just we now got to mix it. I don't care about the snare anymore. I'm just going to get it mixed and mastered. And I had a lovely time with my mate Rob Healy, who I was in the room with him mixing it, right?
Yeah.
And it was just fantastic to have someone to second guess your mixes as well.
Yeah,
because you can second guess your own mixes for ages and ages and ages, but someone will say, no, that's fine, move on.
Yeah. And I ran the mixes by my wife quite a few times as well.
Yeah.
But also, when you live with someone, you've got to be careful how much you do that, because, there's a threshold for that as well. Like I've heard this tune, I maybe sort of wait till you think it's finished and then go, what do you think? Because I've been mixing a lot, and you've got to watch that when you're around other people as well.
Absolutely.
How much they have to hear you do it.
Oh, no, I remember, when I was doing my first tracks, I'd be sending people, here's just the kick drum by itself for 3 minutes. How's that sound? Oh, now here's the snare. And by the time you put the hi-hats in, people are like, just finish it and send me the version. But it's so rewarding if you get that project where you've played every, snare, you've strummed every chord, and then all of a sudden it's finished and you listen back to it and you can go, yeah, I like this.
Yeah, and I'm just coming back around to that too, because that album came out a few weeks ago. And, everyone makes Spotify playlists these days. I made a November one the other day, and I thought, I should put the album on it, because while I'm listening to all the stuff I've been discovering, it'd actually be good while I'm shuffling it in the car to kind of hear my stuff again after a little break from listening to it, and actually hear how it sounds after listening to something else. And that's been kind of nice as well.
It is magic when you can get to that moment, because I know with some of my tracks, I'll listen to it in the car, especially, after someone else's track, and I'll be going oh no, I got that bit all wrong, it sounds dated or whatever.
Yeah.
But then when you step back a little bit, even, so you've had projects before Kamikaze Roadrunners, yeah?
Yeah, it was the first, well, not entirely first, but it's the first time I guess I've sort of taken it seriously as a sort of a solo project. But I've played in bands for years, yeah.
Have you got recordings of those bands from when you were in them?
Yeah, so quite a few. It's in a band called the Enright House in Christchurch, New Zealand.
Yep.
And since I moved to Melbourne, I was in the Naysayers for 3 years.
Yep.
Then a band called Wild Meadows after that. I was in annual leave for a short time, but not long enough to do recordings. I was in them for about a year or so.
This is from the teaching gig?
What's that?
Is this from your teaching gig?
No, this is bands I've been playing.
Oh, yeah, cool, cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I used to, I haven't done it so much at my school now, but when I was teaching in Christchurch, I was out of school for 6 years, and I ran a band which we called a School of Rock.
Yes,
and a reference to the movie. Like a primary school band used to take them off, playing at other schools and everything like that. So that was really cool. And like kind of helped that I was actually in a band too. So the kids knew I wasn't just trying to live through them. Like I actually had my own band and not trying to be successful through you or anything. But just kind of having the fact that I actually played gigs and stuff, and I could tell them, stuff about performance and, tell them to move around on stage and all that stuff and have a bit of fun.
Exactly.
It was really cool.
Do you find that when you listen back, like with those older projects, have you got recordings of them still?
Yeah. So Wild Meadows is on streaming services, The Naysayers, In Right House, other bands. Yeah. Yeah, I still go back and listen to them as well.
Oh, how do you find going back and listening to those older projects now?
Pretty good. And there's experiences of those different recording techniques in there as well. So Wild Meadows, we recorded like a professional studio album. Did that with the Naysayers as well. But when we did after we did a 3-track EP in 2012, sort of professionally done. I think the guy was a student at the time, but sort of done, to a professional standard. The next thing we did was I've got a Tascam 8-track, like digital 8-track recorder. So we did an EP with that. And the first track was like one track with the drums and guitar, like 2 mics, one on the drums, one on the guitar, and then we added everything else.
Yeah.
So it sounds pretty raw and pretty live, and kind of proud of how that sounds in terms of it sounds like a live band recording. Yeah. But then again, also after that, we sort of thought we'd sort of record more seriously again after that, separating all the instruments and everything. But the most sort of extravagant thing we did, put out a song called Our Lady Alacrity, and we recorded that at Sing Sing and spent $1,000 on it.
Yeah.
So you hear the difference when you spend $1,000 and go to Sing Sing. Like that recording sounds amazing.
Which Sing Sing did you go? Do you go to the one on Chapel Street or the one that used to be
Chapel
in Cremorne? Yeah.
A vague memory to describe where it is. There's a building across the road that's like 666.
Ah, yes.
Like, hey,
Yep.
Recording rock and roll, and there's a 666 building across the road.
That's a great little studio, that one. I did some like a little bit of interning there, right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny because there's zero signage. There's just this, this little dingy hole in the wall with a steel door, and it looks like, someone would have pissed there on Friday night, right? But then you go up and it's this amazing studio that's got like the amazing rooms and amazing gear. I don't know if Kai and Jude still run it or not. Did you meet the people?
No, and I should vaguely remember the guy's name that recorded us, but we didn't really meet anyone else. But might have been Prasheen or something like that, I think. But it's an amazing studio.
Oh, it's so good. And it is good to see that some of those studios still exist, because I know it's been, well, as we were saying, like, the technology to do it at home is now so good that it's hard to justify the expense of a professional studio these days.
Yeah. I suppose it's outsourcing these days, isn't it? Like you could do all that and spend months learning how to do it, or, spend the money and pay someone who knows what they're doing. It's probably why people still do it.
Well, that's it. And as you were talking about before, like not only are you competing for people, in their homes in Melbourne, right? Like it's global now. Like, if you've got a bunch of stems that you need to get mixed, you can go onto websites and just go, yep, cool, $20.
Yeah.
And so you also, apart from your Kamikaze Roadrunners project, you run the Melbourne Musicians Forum on both Facebook and you've got the Spotify playlist too, yeah?
Started on Facebook. So, 2012 was my first year in Melbourne, and just created a Facebook group. I think there were other groups. I sort of looked to see if there was anything. I didn't really think I saw anything, and I thought, it's crazy, there should be a group. So sort of made one and just added my bandmates from the Naysayers at the time and a few of their friends. Yeah. And, one by one, someone added their friend, the group got a little bit bigger. And it's one of those things where, it's like with those startup things, like I didn't know it was going to get big. But people kept joining the group, and we just sort of hit 28,000 members.
28,000?
The other day.
I was going to ask,
for 10
in my head
years.
I thought it was like 3 or 4, but no, 28,000 is amazing.
Yeah, and it's staggering. And I don't know if it's one of the biggest of its groups of that kind. It's probably up there, I imagine. They sort of thought there'd be a finite number, like at some point it would stop, because how many musicians can there be? And obviously occasionally it's someone because they're thinking of moving here or thinking of touring, so there's that as well. But ended up with 5 other admins, and there's some mods as well. And the 6 of us that admin it, we've been sort of a team, and we've had chatted on Messenger for pretty much the last 10 years, managing the group, setting up, rules and guidelines and dealing with things people complain about and making the group tidy and clean so that, only good things happen in there. And that takes quite a bit of work and effort. But we're really proud of it now. We've stomped out stuff. Sometimes people said, this happens in the group and it's happened before and admins haven't addressed it. And we've gone we don't want to be seen that way. And we don't want that happening in the group either. So we've got really, really strict rules and guidelines now. And we'll mute people if they don't respect it. If someone sort of trolls or hassles someone. And for some things it'll just be an instant ban now. There's just no
Really?
point.
Yeah.
I mean, depends, if it's blatant disrespect or insult or something like that, we don't want someone like you here. Just what's the point of one of them,
What are the main challenges? Like what would be some
That's a really good question.
memorable incidents if you feel like indulging, right? Like
Yeah.
where you've just gone far out. What's this person on?
I think the bottom line would be disrespect.
Yeah.
The simple way of describing the things we've had to deal with, Or someone sent us a message and said, this is happening, you need to do something. And I think because we've worked really hard on that for 10 years, it's a pretty clean, tidy group now.
Yeah.
Obviously, one of the first rules is, be supportive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So someone will post something and someone would just sort of just comment to insult them or demean them. Like, what are you even in the group for? They don't need that. If someone's asking for feedback on their music or they're sharing something, they don't need to be insulted. Or someone would post looking for a female or gender non-conforming or something like that person, and then people would sort of get angry about that and go, well, that's discrimination. And we'd be like, no. Actually, we started quoting the Equal Opportunities Act at them saying, you actually don't understand how this works. Like, they're absolutely allowed to do that, and it doesn't work the other way around. So we've just had to, kind of comes down to political correctness in a way. Like, we've got to have the right message and the right rules, and follow what the rest of society is doing so that everyone feels, inclusive and supported,
especially in creative communities too. I think it's with creative people, they're just bearing their soul all the time, right?
Yeah.
And so you've really got to provide a supportive environment for that. Otherwise, people just sort of wither and retreat, don't they?
Yeah.
And so you've got the 6 of you that deal with the forum, hey?
Yeah. So we've been pretty much this consistent 6 for about 10 years now.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the playlist and everything. So about 2019, we decided to sort of branch out, made the Instagram page and Spotify playlist, and there's a Bandcamp playlist and YouTube playlist and all that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, one of the other admins, Jaden, he was running the Instagram page for a bit. And then after about 6 months of 2019, sort of like, I don't know what happened, he sort of wasn't really posting anything on there. So I sort of just started sort of interviewing people. So I'd be following local musicians and just started sending people a message saying, do you want to do an interview? And before you mentioned about how, video kind of does better these days than photos.
Yeah.
So for maybe about a year or so, I'd ask them to send a photo of the band. I'd send them the questions. They'd just basically write their responses, and I'd post the interview as a text conversation with a picture. And then, at some point it dawned on me to make it a video. And it's really good. Like, I'd send people, generally like 5 questions and just say, make your own video. So they can sort of go for it. They can have a lot of fun with it if they want.
Well, that's the way of the world.
Unlike this, I've never actually met up with any of them. But I've just sent them the question and said, make the video, send it back. But it's a really cool way to sort of profile local musicians. And there's been a bit of an overlap between the playlist and the interviews as well. Like, a lot of people in the playlist have interviewed before. So it's been pretty cool.
Where can I find those video interviews on?
On the Instagram page.
On the Instagram page, yeah.
And the YouTube channel as well.
Yeah. See, I haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, so I'll have to do that.
That's probably the least people are on that. There's about 100 followers. The Spotify playlist has got about 408 followers now, gradually going up. And obviously, like, the more people you add to it, the more people like it and listen to it as well, because everyone wants to be added to a playlist. So kind of keep rotating that around, like adding new people, kind of trying to make it open to anyone that's in Melbourne or Victoria, but also keep it kind of fairly current. So generally there's music there from about the last 3 months or so. And I used to post in the Facebook group and ask, if you've got music on Spotify, and of course, over 100 people respond. If you add that much at a time, no one's going to listen to all of it. So I've kind of got a bit more savvy lately and just change it to if you put out music in the last month. Because then add a tune that's just come out, so it's always new releases. And then you kind of get an eclectic mix of what's coming out of Melbourne. And obviously we didn't rebrand as Victoria, but it's been Victoria for ages. There's already Music Victoria, they've already got that. But it's definitely for anyone in Victoria.
You'd feel salty if someone from Geelong, it was like, oh no, you're not from Melbourne, you're from Geelong, you can't come on. I noticed that, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a strategy with your playlist where the new entries go on the bottom and then work their way up. Is that right?
No, I think I've had some confusion with that from people.
Okay, yeah.
I think it's a matter of on Spotify, it depends how you sort it.
Yeah.
Because if you're following a playlist, you can also sort it by what's that weird thing, custom or date added or something like that.
Yeah.
So no, I add them. They sort of, well, for me, like the oldest one's at the top and the newest one's at the bottom.
Yeah.
Because someone said something about a ranking the other day, and I said I don't know if they were kidding, but I said it's not a ranking. It's just you're the 112th song I've added.
Yeah.
But it depends how listeners actually sort it.
Because eventually stuff would have to go off that playlist, isn't it?
Exactly, and like I said, I think it only goes back about something like 3 months at the moment.
Yeah.
Because it kind of keeps it current. As for me, listen to it and everyone else as well. So you're constantly hearing a mix of new stuff. Also shuffles the artist around too. So, someone's been in there or they've been in there a few times. It also just makes it not too big. I think somewhere around 100 songs is good. Because it's been 300 or 400 before, and I don't think anyone would ever get through it. You'd maybe hit shuffle and listen for a bit, but you're probably not going to hear the whole thing.
Well, that's exactly right. Because, if you're talking about 100 songs, if you're assuming, 4 minutes a song, gosh, how many hours is that? You know what I mean?
Like 8 hours.
Yeah. That's a long drive.
Yeah.
And so what have you got coming up next? You've got, and how do you find, before I ask that question, how do you find that you are distributing your time between these different projects now? Like, is one sort of more demanding time-wise than the others?
That's an interesting question. And so I've got our 3 days away from our daughter turning 1. So being a parent this year, the first year of parenthood, it's probably this year more than ever. Like all this stuff is honestly a hobby. Like it's the best way to look at it. So sometimes, I'll be on Instagram, I'll be, see like a local musician and send them a message, or they'll send me a song and I'll add it to the playlist. Like sometimes it's just a couple of clicks and just add them, do a post save out of them, and they share it. Same with the music. And like what's cool about this year with the songwriting is, say, I'll be playing the guitar to my daughter and just be like sort of playing around and going, actually, that's really good. And then my wife was just about to take her out, and I'd sort of just like, they walk out, and I just sort of go into the garage and go, actually, I'm going to record that.
Yeah.
So about 4 songs I've written this year started from just finger picking something for her that, just I thought she'd like, and I thought, actually, that's really good. And she's actually on a couple of the recordings as well. So the first few months of the year, I actually often had our daughter sort of asleep on my arm, and I'd be sitting there, use the computer with the projector. So I have like, the screen on the far wall of the lounge and just be sitting there, just sort of clicking away and mixing with the headphones on while she was sort of having a sleep on my lap. That's kind of like double, so multitasking. But she's crawling around and we're following her around the house now. So that's going to take a hiatus.
Oh, you got to watch those sharp corners now, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be different for a while. Like I'll probably do it like sometimes when I'm by myself at home or something like that. And there's been a little bit of thinking about turning it into a band, but then that's the same question. Like this year more than ever, like I haven't wanted to be going out to practice after work or something because I've been out all day. I just want to go home and see my kid.
Exactly, yeah.
That's pretty special.
I know a lot of people, they sort of, their priorities change when they become a parent, of course. Yeah. And so, like, especially when they're little as well, you do want to spend as much time as possible with them. Absolutely. So if you can certainly, like come up with some riffs while you're, you're holding her in your arms, then that sounds like a good way to play things, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And what's funny about that too, obviously being a musician and a parent, I've made up like a nice, bedtime lullaby and just kind of a song about her. And the song is probably the most catchiest sort of good sort of rock and roll song I've written, but it also might not actually ever share it. So I think I might actually record it and even get my wife to sing on it as well, but actually like record it for her, which probably would be the most special thing to do, like record it, mix it and everything, but just say like, this is yours, like we wrote you a song.
That would be amazing, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like the catchiest thing I've ever done. I used to like sing it to her every day. So that could probably be the next thing, actually just record a song and maybe just for one person.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
maybe share it later.
An amazing sort of custom gift, isn't it? It's like, hey, this is our expression of our love for you. That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
When you were saying you were playing your guitar, right? What sort of guitar do you have?
I'm actually going to go blank on brands. I don't think acoustic or electric. I don't think I know what either of them are.
Yeah.
I've got an acoustic like in the living room.
Yep.
And just a steel string. And I can't remember what it is.
Yeah.
But I'd sort of be playing that one to our daughter and then sort of go into the garage and record the electric. I've tried, it's one thing I haven't worked out with recording. I tried recording the acoustic a couple of times when I had an idea and just played it back and thought, no, like I don't know what the art is to recording acoustic guitars, but I'm better off, recording it clean on the electric and using plugins.
Yeah.
Just one thing I've discovered, I don't know how you make an acoustic guitar sound good. Maybe it's pickups, but I haven't figured it out yet. It sounded terrible the couple of times I tried it.
Were you plugging it into has your guitar got a DI or are you just
the
trying to
acoustic
mic
guitar
it
hasn't
up?
got pickups.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just tried a directional mic and it just sounded really dead. And yeah, Maybe it's the wrong mic, I don't know. But I haven't figured that out yet.
What's in your mic collection?
I've got a couple of, Sennheiser. Is it Sennheiser? I've got that sticker on the back of my car. Directional mics. Oh, sure, directional mics.
Oh, yeah.
SM57s, I think.
Classic.
Yeah, really good. And should we go back to the other thought? Guitar pickups. Oh, yeah. So there's a tune on the album called Slipped, and it's also about the third or fourth recording I've done of that tune. So I've got my mother-in-law's piano, got that off her a few months ago, and someone's put our daughter on that and let her sort of have a bit of a play. But unlike all that other stuff, GarageBand and all that stuff, I recorded that, I put my phone next to the piano and used the voice recorder on the phone. So, and there's quite a few bands with stories like that, we just did that, just recorded that on the phone. But yeah, the only thing I did after that was a couple of plugins. I think I did a kind of a delay thing, to make it more sound like it's in a kind of a hall or something. And I added another effect. GarageBand's got some of those sort of experimental sounds.
Yes, yeah.
And there's something that kind of makes it sound like it's in a UFO or something. It's just
yeah.
It's like it's sort of like listening to music in space or something like that. So that's pretty cool.
It's always nice to find some applications for those really wacky sounds, because sometimes you listen to it and you go, oh, that sounds great, but I don't know how I'd ever do it. But it sounds like you've found some places to actually slip it in. And
yeah. And actually I did that 2 other times. There's I don't know what the app is. I've got a really good audio recording app I discovered. But on Shadows, which turns out to be, it's probably our best song, I think. There's an app called Wave Editor. And one night around June, it's about the time Jess sent me the demos, you get those rainy nights in Melbourne where there's heavy rain, and after you get those sort of crickets or cicadas.
Oh,
really loud.
Yeah, definitely.
And so recorded both of them, and so the whole way through that track, you can sort of hear them in the background. And when the sort of music finishes, really, really mellow, finger-picking guitar, and when the tune sort of finishes, you just sort of hear the rain and the crickets. And think of it as a real Melbourne thing, but I suppose there's other parts of the world where people will be familiar with those sounds after a bit of stormy weather. But just sort of absolutely mellow out at the end, just that, like when you're sitting at home and you listen to the rain and it's just like, I'm so glad I'm not in it. There's something so relaxing about it.
Well, here in Melbourne for the last few weeks, we've almost had nothing but rain, haven't we?
Yeah, exactly. I think I missed the recording opportunity. But
it has been nice to see today. It's been 27 degrees, and I'm like, really? Is summer actually here?
Yeah, next Saturday is 30, I think.
Wow, yeah.
It's been a cold. I think it's still La Nina the last 2 years.
Yeah, no, definitely has been La Nina.
Yeah, it's freezing.
Do you find that you get a lot of the sound of the rain in your garage?
Yeah, but I don't think I've been out there trying to record when it has been.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those kind of things, that incidental sound, it's the kind of thing, sometimes if you're recording and there's a background sound like that, it's actually worth keeping it. You get songs, where there's a car going past or something like that, and it just stays in there. It kind of adds to the whole feel of the recording.
It's almost a bit of a Pink Floyd thing, isn't it? That sort of incidental sort of sound. It's like, oh yeah, that just gives a bit of texture. I know there's that very famous story with Billie Eilish where she and her brother were, walking around Melbourne, and they recorded, the pedestrian crossing noises.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They actually got that. They recorded that on their iPhone or something, right? And then they just turned it into a track, and it was one of their biggest. I think it was called "Bad Guy." I'm showing my age here. I'm just like, what's the name of that Billie Eilish song that was on every radio for a year?
I think it is Bad Guy. Yeah. That's amazing. There's so many stories like that where it's the song that they were just mucking around with, and that's the hit.
So what do you find with the feedback from your tracks? Like, are you sort of going, okay, well, I really like that one, but people don't seem to be resonating with it, and they like this one more? Or did you sort of have an idea?
I have had that so far. I thought, especially when I was mixing and remixing over and over, became really convinced that, Solitude was, the best one.
Yeah.
And then put a video out for that and shared that. I got some good feedback, but put out Shadows, which is that's the one I was playing to my daughter, the really mellow finger picking. And it's almost all minor chords too. It's just minor chord, and just picking like that, which I almost never do. I'm not that good at finger picking. But just feedback from that was amazing. I had someone say it's their new favorite song.
Oh, wow.
And a couple of other people was talking to someone online last night, and they sort of just chatting, and someone sort of said, I just sort of, had to listen to Shadows, it's really good. And then they said, actually, I'm going to go to Bandcamp and buy it. And no one actually buys music these days. So I got an email saying that someone had, paid for the album, which you can get it for free on Bandcamp if you want. They paid $15 for it. So that's cool.
That's amazing.
Someone liked it enough and paid money for it. That's awesome.
Well, when you think about with Spotify, right? Like, what do they pay? A sixth of a cent per stream?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
$15 is a lot of streams, and that's from one person.
Yeah, how many Spotify streams would that be? Like
Oh, God.
a few million?
You know, like thousands, wouldn't it? Thousands and thousands and thousands. Do you find that you ever think about monetizing what you've done, like the playlists or the... I guess it's hard though, isn't it? You sort of you feel a bit grubby maybe with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I don't think we would. And yeah, we've had a couple of conversations about, when you've got a big group, there's things you could do, like you said, you could have ads in the group and all that kind of stuff. But we all just agree we want to keep it really clean. Like it's good that it's the way it is. It's a community thing, and if you keep all that stuff out of it, it's always going to be a community thing. So the things that you could do, like affiliate with other things, like if we connect with Music Victoria or anything like that, like there's no point in doing any of those things because we have our own niche. And if we do anything like that, it will change how we look. And then because people will be like, oh, you're doing it because you're part of that. Like, oh, you're a government thing or something like that. So especially when you get a group that size, like there's no point in doing anything else, It's like, I mentioned NoFX before, in their book they talked about how they had the opportunity for a major record deal and then they just said no. And in the book, the different bandmates are talking about their perspective of the same conversation with a guy from MTV. And every time the MTV guys did something like that, the other guys were like, oh yeah, that sounds great. And then Mike said, yeah, but, and then they'd hear him and go, oh, he's right. Yeah. It was like they were saying, oh, we're going to put your music videos on MTV. And then he said, tell me what happened to the bands that were on MTV a year ago. Because pretty much all those bands have gone back to playing small venues with no one there after, filling out stadiums. And they were like saying the most likely thing that'll happen here is we'll get screwed over. And so they realized that actually staying independent and not trying to accept any big record deal, even though they were being offered them, realized it was actually a better way to go. So a bit of a difference between that and a Facebook group, but like the analogy's good. Like you're better off to keep your independence,
I was going to comment. Sometimes that autonomy is just priceless.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, whatever you get for money or any kind of combination, like, yeah, there's no point.
Because the industry is notorious for churn as well. It's like, yep, here you are, you're on the pedestal, you're, on the cover of Rolling Stone this week.
Yeah.
But then a year from now, and I think, Triple J might be guilty of this sometimes too. Like they'll just absolutely hype up one particular artist and then you won't see anything from them, 2-3 years later. And in fact, I know, I vaguely recall reading something about, women singers of the 90s, right? They were on Triple J and then they sort of go on to Double J and then they sort of get pushed off the treadmill. And there really is a value to staying independent and absolutely maintaining the control. Because, it'd be amazing if someone's saying, okay, we're going to pay you $35,000 to go on and, we'll use your music on an ad, right? And you just go, wow, I could really use $35,000 right now. But then you sort of go, oh, well, if that's what people know me as, that guy from the Medibank commercial or something like that, you wonder whether you might have made a mistake, hey? Yeah,
exactly. That's a good thing about having a day job you like as well. Like there's an awesome Confucius quote, find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I think teaching's like that.
Yeah.
But, obviously if I could have made money in music, it would have been great. But at the same time, I'm not looking for any kind of thing like that to happen. So it kind of puts you in a comfortable position. And, bands with their own labels are in the same sort of position. And a big label comes in and they say, actually, we're fine. Like they're already getting, 65% of the cut from their sales. Like they don't need it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like it's that kind of temptation thing too, like being offered more money. But like, why do you need it,
So your day gig is teaching, that's right? You're a middle school teacher?
Yeah.
Were you doing that in Christchurch as well? Or?
Yeah, I've been teaching since about 2005 in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And it's a good day job and I've brought music into it a large chunk of my time. The last few years I just haven't done it because, our school has enough music and like they don't need it. They have so much and the kids actually want to go and play at lunchtime, which is fair enough. It's good for me to give myself a break as well. But I was running school bands for a while.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You were telling me like,
yeah.
Getting your Jack Black on.
Yeah.
So that's really good. Well, we might wrap it up here, actually.
Yeah, awesome.
Fantastic. Now, if people want to find all of your various projects, where's the best place to find you? Well, have you got like a list of all the Simon Gemmill projects or simongemmill.com?
I think, people have to prioritize these days, don't they? And obviously for a lot of us for years, it probably was all on Facebook, but I think there's been a big migration from there for a long time. Instagram is probably the best these days.
Yep.
So I've got the Kamikaze Roadrunners Instagram page and the Melbourne Musicians one. So it's probably the best thing to look up.
Yeah.
And there's Melbourne Musicians, I don't know if you find it if you search on Spotify maybe. I've had people say before, I think they've searched for it and they couldn't find it.
I will definitely put links in the video to find all these things too. So that should be great.
And also, obviously Melbourne and Victoria musicians watching and listening, like if you're a local artist and you want to submit a tune to the playlist, definitely do it.
Well worth it. Well worth it. I've done it twice.
Yeah, exactly. It's about 99% yes rate. I mean, every now and then you sort of think something isn't going to fit or isn't right, but it's usually a yes.
Well, you've got to do what feels right, don't you?
Yeah, it is a kind of a curating thing as much as it's got a small following, but you want it to be eclectic, but you hit shuffle and, kind of everyone's going to enjoy it.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's mostly a yes. So
fantastic. Thanks again, Simon.
all right, thanks for having me.
Have a good one.
Thanks.